Welcome to Merkabah Activation. You can't criticize geometry. It's never wrong. Today, I want to welcome you to our overview of the Merkabah activation process. We are going to start today looking at the big picture. So, Merkabah activation is the way that we experience it and teach it, it is a healing modality that we train in for 12 months. This healing modality has four main parts to it. Today, we are looking at an overview of the process, and that is leading us into Merkabah Activation 101, which happens within this first part, the Merkabah preparation part of the journey. So, this process is divided up into a series of courses. And the first course that we're exploring today is the Merkabah Activation 101, in which we prepare our energy fields for the full activation of our Merkabah light body. It is a deep purification process that we start with. We work with the violet flame. We learn about the Merkabah as a chariot. We explore and purify and activate our etheric body, our mental body, and our emotional body. We also anchor into the earth through our earth star chakra, fully activate our diamond star body, which is the diamond star body is like the baby Merkabah field. It is a field that expands outside of our physical body, and it is the first stage in the full activation of our Merkabah field, which extends 50 feet out from our bodies in every direction. And we finally end with a light body programming, in which we are taking the first step to that full Merkabah activation. Then the next stage of the process is chakra activation. So we have our 7 physical chakras that exist as energy centers within our bodies. And then we have our transpersonal chakras, which are the energy centers that extend outside of our bodies. And we systematically go through every single one of our chakras, breathing light through our chakras. Our chakras are like the anchors of our Merkabah vehicle of light. So, in order for the full Merkabah activation to take place, we must first activate each of our individual chakras. Then we move through a DNA activation and attunement process. Our DNA they are the instructor cells in our bodies. So as we activate our DNA, we are activating all cellular function in our bodies. And when we use the word When I use the word activate, it is a conscious process where we are breathing light into our bodies systematically through every single system in our bodies over a period of the DNA activation and attunement process total takes approximately 3 to 6 months. So a big part of this process is the activation of our DNA. And I like to think of it like as we activate our Merkabah vehicle of light, it is like we are training our energy bodies in a new language. And think about when you first learned the language that you speak right now. When you go back to the beginning of you learning that language, there was a process that you went through where you learned like the alphabet. You learned the sounds of those core letters. Then you learned how to put those letters together to form words, and then those words to form sentences. And then slowly you reading and listening to people speaking started to make more sense to you. It was like you could decode what was on the page or what people were speaking because of the training you had in those foundational principles of language, the letters, the words, the sentences. Well, DNA activation and attunement is it leads you through that same process, but on an energetic level. You are learning to retrain your mind in a new language that is energetic in nature. And the best way and the simplest way to describe it, it is an internal language. So instead of opening your eyes and looking outside of yourself for the answers, uh, DNA activation and attunement teaches us that there is an energetic language, a a flow of energy that we can tune into and decode and understand that is internal. It is invisible. And we can only see it when we repetitively turn inward over and over again. And as we do this, we learn to not just feel the energy flowing through our bodies, not just to sense it every once in a while, but to master that language so that we become proficient in the the language of our energetic body, and we are able to communicate with it, listen, and also to direct it at will. And then the final part of the process is the actual Merkaba activation. And this is the culmination of this journey is to expand into the fullness of your Merkaba vehicle of light, which extends 50 feet above you, 50 feet out to your sides, 50 feet beneath your feet. So imagine right now, your whole entire body is surrounded by this field that is 50 feet in diameter. So wherever you are sitting right now, this is not just your body that this Merkaba activation is affecting, but it's affecting everyone in your vicinity. It's shaping your home, it's shaping your family, potentially your neighbors. It's shaping every single person that you come into contact with. And for our purposes, it creates a sacred, protective, high vibrational, energetic temple around our bodies that we do all of our healing work within. So, in our time that we're going to spend today, I'm going to introduce you to the big picture of this process. So, how does this all come together, and why are we using this field of light? Like, what is the Merkabah? What are the origins of it, and where did this all come from? So, we're going to just take a few moments to explore the history of Merkabah activation. And I want you to really stay with me through this process because the history is deep, but it leads us into this this deeper understanding of why we are doing this work. And so let's jump right in. We're going to start at the beginning, which is 1000 BC. So 1,000 years before time as we know it started, we have the building of Solomon's temple. This was a temple that was built in ancient Jerusalem by King Solomon. The temple was a holy sanctuary. It was known as Solomon's temple, and it was also known as the first temple. There are many depictions of the temple. This is one that you see right here. It served as a permanent central house of worship for God. It replaced the portable tabernacle where worship would generally take place. Its purpose was to house the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark was a religious storage chest, and it symbolized God's physical presence. It acted as a focal point for prayer, for sacrifices, and for holy festivals. Specifically, it contained three things: the tablets of the law, which was the physical stone that the Ten Commandments were written on. And the Ten Commandments, you want to think of them in this context like the law of spirit. It also had something called Aaron's rod. Aaron's rod it follows a story similar to the sword and the stone. And so what happened was there were the leaders of God's people. They were fighting about who would be chosen to lead. So God instructs these 12 leaders to place their staffs inside of this, something called a tent of meeting. And Aaron's rod was the only rod that sprouted. It actually blossomed and produced almonds overnight. Almonds, like the almonds that we eat. So this was a miraculous sign, and it validated that Aaron and his descendants were the chosen priests. The rod then is a symbol of promise for those who are of pure-hearted faith and belief in the promise of miracles to come. So it is a symbol that by your belief, you will sprout miracles. The pot of manna was a supernatural source of provision. Normal manna spoiled, and worms would start to grow in it if it was kept overnight. But the portion inside of the golden pot of manna, which was inside of the Ark of the Covenant, did not rot. It symbolized eternal life and also incorruptibility. And all of these items then were were kept in a place known as the Holy of Holies. So this symbolized the holiest essence of spirit of God at this time. So these were the laws that they lived by, the pure belief that brought miracles, and the sustenance and the incorruptibility of God's provision. So, however, the only evidence that this temple actually existed is in drawings and stories about the temple. So there's no structure remaining that ever proved that it existed. It was viewed as the literal dwelling place of God's glory on earth. And we see in many depictions, here we see an Islamic depiction of Suleiman, who is translated into King Solomon, talking with his architect. And you can see on his right side, he has angels. And on his left side, they are described as supernatural beings. So there is a real sense that the construction of the temple was built in alignment with higher spiritual beings. And these words of King Solomon become very prophetic, and they are an anchor in our understanding of what the Merkabah is. He says, I have indeed built you an exalted temple. And he's talking to God in this quote. So he's saying, I've built this exalted temple for God, a place where you can live forever. The heavens, even the highest heavens, cannot contain you. How much less this temple I have built. So he recognizes that the physical temple cannot match the enormity of the presence of God, but nevertheless, he has created this exalted temple on earth for God to dwell in. So that happens. Fast forward, the temple's there. We do have a lot of stories that come out of the temple, but for the most part, it becomes this kind of obscure time that we don't know too much about, because the records from this time are sparse. So we move forward to 622 BC, and someone by the name of Ezekiel is born at this time. And this is an actual picture of Ezekiel on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. And it was painted by Michelangelo around 1508. So like thousands of years after Ezekiel was born, about 2,000 years after he's born, he is memorialized in the Sistine Chapel. But at his birth, he was born as a simple priest. So he's born in Jerusalem. His father was a priest. He became a priest. And then he had a calling to become a prophet. Move forward about 30 years. So 30 years later, Ezekiel has a vision. And this vision becomes the foundation of the Merkabah teachings. His vision is of a divine chariot. This is an actual depiction, the clearest depiction that we have of his vision. A divine chariot that came out of 4 living creatures and the radiant glory of God. In his vision, Ezekiel describes a storm wind from the north, a great cloud with fire and brightness, and 4 living creatures, each having 4 faces: human, lion, ox, and eagle, and 4 wings surrounded by the light. In this vision, Ezekiel above him sees the glory of God and bows down to this divine presence. The faces are known to symbolize the highest attributes of creation. So the human represents reason, intellect, and God-like love. The lion represents wild power, courage, and supreme majesty. The ox, also known as the calf, represents strength, endurance, and diligent service. The eagle represents far-sighted wisdom, the ability to see things from a higher perspective, freedom, and swift agility. the wheels intersecting one another are described as wheels within wheels. They are an orb, and they move wherever the Spirit directs. This vision becomes a widespread vision that is told almost instantly. The vision is told in the opening chapter of the book of Ezekiel in the Hebrew Bible. So this vision gets recorded, and in the 6th century, which is almost the exact same time that he has the vision, we see it recorded in the Hebrew Bible. So this vision becomes a anchor for the people of this time to begin to understand a more celestial, esoteric understanding of God, a symbolic. It provided people with a symbolic understanding of the celestial realms, and this prophecy that this vision that he saw was a prophecy of what was to come, and it became foundational in Jewish mystical traditions. Specifically, there is a book called the Sefer Hekhalot. In Hebrew, this means the Book of Palaces. This is the central text of Jewish mystical writings that began what became known as the Hekhalot literature or the Merkabah literature, which would be written which started being written at this time. The text is a guided journey through 7 heavenly palaces. It's assisted by the transformed patriarch Enoch, known as Archangel Metatron. Each palace presents escalating tests, angelic guardians, and sacred seals. It teaches a practice of heavenly ascent, of angelic interaction, and it illuminates divine mysteries. There are visions of the divine throne, of angels, and of the exaltation of Enoch and Metatron as a celestial scribe. The Merkabah tradition interpreted Ezekiel's vision of the chariot and the throne as metaphors for a heavenly vehicle of mystical ascent. And we dive deep into this literature in our Merkabah 101 course. This is just an overview of the, the, the big picture of what this literature teaches us. The chariot, or the Merkabah vehicle of light, came alive when one inhabited heavenly virtues. These virtues were the tools needed to ascend, to pass the tests, and to come into union with God. Hekhalot mysticism was an elitist set of teachings. It was designed only for those initiated into the priesthood. So this was not information that was widely distributed. This was not a widespread teaching. It was only delivered in cloistered settings, meaning it was protected and only designed for those who had already devoted their lives to God. In Hekhalot literature, God resides in the highest heavenly realm. He's seated on a vast cosmic throne of glory inside the innermost celestial palace. The mystic's goal in this Merkabah literature is an upward, perilous, external journey through 7 heavenly palaces to gaze upon God, to come into union with God. So it is an external journey. Rituals are esoteric in nature. It means that there's a lot of religious symbolism involved in the rituals. I like to think of the Catholic Mass as an example of this esoteric ritual. It's like you are taking in this wafer, and that represents the body of Christ. And there was, even though God was not known as Christ in this tradition, it's a similar practice in these early esoteric rituals. And it marks a shift from the historical earth centric view of spirit to a focus on finding spirit in the celestial realms through esoteric ritual. In these teachings, the pinnacle of divine experience is in heaven and the heavenly realms. It's in the heavenly realms that God opens human perception, teaches humans how to reach a spiritual level also in which they can continue to ascend. Now, let's come back to the temple because this is all connected. So we got that first temple, right? It was built, and now, not very long after it's built, it is destroyed. An army from Babylon enters Jerusalem, destroys the temple, burns significant buildings, tears down the city walls, and looted the temple's precious gold and silver treasures, taking them to Babylon. The siege and subsequent burning of Jerusalem devastates the kingdom of Judah and the Jewish people. It triggers what's known as the Babylonian exile, which is the exile of the Jewish people from their homeland. And it resulted in the loss of the Ark of the Covenant. So that sacred storage chest is stolen. So here we have King Solomon who says, I have built you this exalted house for you to dwell in forever. And then the house is destroyed. At the same time that the house is destroyed, we have this vision of Ezekiel. And we have this literature, the Merkabah literature, that is being developed. And as this story continues now, so the temple is destroyed, Ezekiel has a new vision. So after that temple is destroyed, we hear from Ezekiel again. And in the year 573, Ezekiel sees the city of Jerusalem. Again, in a second vision, he sees it full of people worshiping idols and practicing evil. In this vision, there's a great judgment that falls upon the city. And then he sees a vision for a second temple. The second temple is a meticulous architectural vision. This is a creative rendering of that second temple. It is described as a future temple. It is meant to be a symbol of God's presence being brought back to Jerusalem into a holy sanctuary. This temple had specific measurements. It was also immense. It was bigger than the first temple, and it took up an area larger than the whole city of Jerusalem at the time. So it bordered on like an impossibility to create out of the human resources that they had. Within the temple was a miraculous, life-giving river that flowed out from the temple threshold down to the Dead Sea, healing everything it touched. So he's got this vision of the second temple, right? And so then we actually see what comes next is there is a building of this second temple. The building of the second temple takes about 20 years. It started in 1536, and this is BC, and it ended in 1516. So remember, BC counts backwards, so we're counting like towards zero in this time. So there's a 16-year period They start in 1536, then for 16 years, no building happens on the temple. They're stalled. And then finally, they finish it. It takes 20 years, 1516. And the building of this temple was nothing like Ezekiel's vision. Because of this, it's believed that Ezekiel's visions were more of an idealized cosmic archetype, a symbol for a return to spiritual holiness and a prophecy for a future era, instead of there was like a shift in consciousness at this time where there were many groups that started to see these visions not as physical temples that were going to be built, but instead as a symbolic temple of God that was that was happening in the celestial realm. And the people who built the second temple really just abandoned all of Ezekiel's plans, visions, didn't take any of it into account. And subsequently, the second temple was eventually destroyed by Roman troops in 70 BC. So the second temple stood for about 550 years. But when the Romans finally destroyed the second temple, it was the most devastating loss that the Jewish people had ever experienced. Tens of thousands of people died when the Romans invaded the city. Nearly 100,000 people were captured and sold into Roman slavery, which was like their entire civilization at the time. It was a huge devastation to the people. When they destroyed the temple, they also destroyed the physical altar where they would sacrifice animals. So the destruction of the temple led to the end of animal sacrifices. So the destruction of the second temple, it wasn't just like a physical building that was destroyed. It literally changed the scope of the Jewish religion. They stopped sacrificing animals. They stopped um, what was known as temple worship, and they moved to what's known as rabbinic Judaism, where the focus shifted from temple rituals to Torah study, Torah being the equivalent to the Bible in Judaism. It shifted to prayer. It shifted to community in synagogues, and it focused on acts of loving kindness. So the destruction of the second temple shows us that the temple itself was not just a physical building, but it was a symbol of a way of life that ended at that time. And in Christian theology, many Christians of this time began to see Ezekiel's vision of the new temple as a symbol of the coming of Jesus. So that this new temple was not a building that was to be built. It wasn't just a celestial vision, but it was a symbol of the coming of God in human form through Jesus. The New Testament, and so the New Testament is like the Christian addition to the Torah. So the Torah gives us the Old Testament, and then Christianity adds on the New Testament. That's like the second book of the Bible. And it teaches us that God's presence does not dwell in a building or a temple or a storage chest, but it dwells within Jesus. And Jesus dwells within us. In the earliest Merkabah literature, the Merkabah, vehicle of light, is a tool that helps you to travel up into the heavenly realms. However, in later teachings of Jewish mystics, the Merkabah literature eventually stopped being produced, and the mystical traditions of Judaism evolved into what is known as the Kabbalah teachings. And in those teachings, we see this shift to understanding that God is not a force that is living outside of you, but instead within each human soul, there is a piece of God from above. A core Kabbalistic teaching is Leit Ator Pani Minu, which means there is no place empty of him. So in this new shift in thinking, there was this awareness that God fills all of creation, that the divine energy sustaining the universe also sustains the inner core of each person. And there's these two words they use, which is immanent and transcendent. God is both immanent, meaning close within us and sustaining us, and transcendent, meaning vastly beyond our comprehension at the exact same time. So the core teachings then shifted, and there began to be this shift in consciousness and realization that there is a temple of spirit that is outside of you, and there's also a temple that is deep within. And your Merkabah vehicle of light is an activated energetic field that serves as a personal temple of light. This activated Merkabah vehicle of light is a symbol for the new temple that is personal. So when we look back to King Solomon's original prophetic words, which is, I've built for you an exalted temple, that exalted temple is a personal temple that each of us has the capacity to build for ourselves. It is a spiritual temple that we all have access to when we maintain our focus upon the light, and specifically when we receive the light of Christ. It is also a vehicle that allows us to stay aligned with the light of God in all we do. It requires meticulous, ordered thoughts. This is not a temple that we can build haphazardly. There is a very deliberate structure to this temple and to the process that we take to build the temple. It requires an order in our actions and a wholehearted focus on the light of God to sustain. When we sustain the temple in our thoughts, through our actions, within our energy field, through it flows a river of life, peace, and well-being. This is the Holy Spirit of God that we gain access to at all times through this Merkabah vehicle of light. I use this example that I'd like you to visualize with me. I like to think of the temple like a hot air balloon. So you understand, like, the basic concept of this temple is this field of light that surrounds you. So you may be thinking, okay, so like, how does that work practically on an everyday level? Like, how can that help me? And so to think of how it can help you, think of a hot air balloon. Imagine if you had your own personal hot air balloon and you used it to navigate through your entire day. In the morning, when you wake up, You get into your hot air balloon and you complete all of your morning routines in that hot air balloon. And the hot air balloon is you, within the hot air balloon, you are like flying above your life. You are not anchored into the problems of the world. Instead, your focus is unequivocally on um, the presence of the light of God. You only get out of your hot air balloon to come down to earth and tend to the people and places that you love. All of your self-care, all of your work, and if you choose, even your sleep happens within your hot air balloon. When you travel in your hot air balloon, you're able to access your fifth dimensional mind. There is a higher mind that you have access to, a mind that is in alignment with God. You see all problems, all sickness and illness, all war and suffering within the world from a higher perspective. From this place, there's a greater clarity in your decisions. There's a greater ease that enters your daily life, and you begin to interact with your life on earth in a different way. Once you begin to live within an activated Merkabah vehicle of light, life as you know it changes forever. Your physical location can stay the same, your work and your loved ones stay the same, but your experience of life is completely different. And I can personally attest to this because I have gone through this process myself, and it has changed every fiber of my experience of life. And it's anchored me into this strength as a healer that is indestructible, which is why I'm so passionate about sharing this practice with you. The Merkabah Activation courses teach you how to build the hot air balloon, how to keep it full and fueled so that you can travel within it daily, and how to anchor it to your physical body. You learn a process using your breath to anchor the light into your physical cells and your chakra centers to prepare you for Merkabah activation and to sustain that activated field. Now, this is the timeline that we just described. So if we look all the way back, that 1,000 years before time, to the destruction of that second temple, this marks this great shift in awareness from a God that lives outside of us, that we have in a storage chest, to a celestial experience with God. And that happened through a lot of physical destruction. It was like Solomon built the temple, and then we realized that the physical world is it's transitory. There is no place on earth that we can build that God is going to be exalted in forever. Instead, we have to build that structure within our own minds and hearts. And that brings us to Merkabah activation. The word Merkabah, also spelt Merkavah in Hebrew, translates directly in Hebrew to the word chariot. If you break down the root of the word, it translates to light, spirit, body. And the word Merkabah, it brings light through spirit into our body. That is both a practice, a process, and a state of being. Your Merkabah vehicle of light then connects your mind and your body with spirit. It is both a vehicle for mystical ascent, and it's a process that builds a temple of energy around you from the ground up. Merkabah activation is a spiritual experience that requires full and complete devotion to the light of God. And this is what makes this modality different from any other modality that we teach. There's no other energy healing modality in which you must have devotion to God. In fact, I often say that a relationship with God is not necessary. It's helpful, but not necessary. However, in Merkabah activation, this relationship with God is central. Now, God, you don't have to think of God like it has to take a certain religious form. It doesn't need to be a belief in Jesus as God, like a Christian God or a Jewish God. I would say that this belief can be in your heart. And you want to think of God as the source of all life, the light at the center of all that is, the benevolent force that is flowing through our experience of life. So in order to enter into this process, you have to have a trust in this force that is bigger than yourself, this light that is sustaining all life on earth. It requires absolute focus, and once built, once the Merkabah field is built, once your vehicle of light is built, it is a deeply healing, empowering, and transformational tool that unites your mind with the presence of God in every moment of your day. The Merkabah is comprised of sacred geometric shapes, specifically two interlocking tetrahedra. A tetrahedra is well, you can see right here the upward pointing triangle, but it is a three-dimensional triangle. And then the downward pointing triangle, also three-dimensional. Those are both tetrahedra. When they come together, they're called a star tetrahedra. And the Merkabah is a spinning star tetrahedra. The top and the bottom three-dimensional triangles spin in opposite directions, and this creates an electromagnetic field. The building of the Merkabah happens through your breath and through your attention to this rotating field of light around your body. So we practice the visualization within our minds of the star tetrahedra again and again and again and again and again until it becomes second nature, until it has like become an automatic part of your daily experience to visualize this spinning star tetrahedra around you and to enter into it. In sacred geometry, the tetrahedron is a symbol of stability, and the star tetrahedron is a symbol of dynamic balance. And so when you enter into this Merkabah vehicle of light, it anchors you into a stable place in your life, and it brings a dynamic balance into all that you do. And what I would say, because we are activating our Merkabah vehicle of light for the purpose of healing, that field then stretches out 50 feet in all directions so that everyone that comes into contact with you, everyone that enters into your field, then feels that stability and finds themselves moving into a more balanced state of mind and balanced state of health. The Merkabah symbol is the interlocking tetrahedron that creates these rotating energy fields that brings a balance of polarities. And the best way to describe this is it inspires you in ways that are healthy. So a lot of times when we see people who are suffering in our healing practice, it is because there are certain practices, that daily habits that they're engaging in, that are maybe working. It's like polar opposite to what they need for health. And a lot of times it can be hard after a life of certain habits to change those habits. So you want to think of, like, if there were a spectrum of health, if you are on one end of the spectrum of health is healthy habits that bring you into alignment, your cells into alignment with a harmonious state of mind. And they create a harmonious field that your cells are operating in. On the other end of the spectrum is something that is not creating that harmony. It may be in many different ways. It can be creating a field of disharmony within your cells. So that could be, I will give a simple example of smoking, because this is a great example. We know when we're smoking, we're bringing toxins into our body, right? That's unhealthy. That's on one side of the polarity. But on the other side, when we're non-smokers, we're experiencing a greater state of perfect health. But when you're actively engaged in smoking, it's easier said than done to be like, yeah, just practice the healthy habits and become a non-smoker. So what the activated Merkabah field does is it balances those polarities. It makes it easier to go towards the middle of that spectrum. So you no longer feel a desire to engage in unhealthy habits. And we have conducted research on this practice over the past 15 years, and over 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 again, we see people who document this. They say, it's just easier for me this week to eat healthy. It was easier for me this week to let go of these negative thoughts that I had been repeating in my mind. It was easier this week for me to choose not to smoke, for example. And so there's an ease that enters into your mind, your body, your experience of life as you start this process. And so it's not just this esoteric journey to meet the consciousness of God, but it's a deeply healing and recalibrating field that is a catalyst for health. This field of light is both a chariot of light and an activated light body. So as you are building your Merkabah vehicle of light, you are simultaneously activating your light body. Your Merkabah vehicle of light is a tool that allows your consciousness to align with the light of God. It provides spiritual protection and personal transformation. I have found that the Merkabah vehicle of light is the most stable and visible field of light that I've ever experienced in my life. When I tune into this light again and again in my work, in my morning walks, in my daily habits, and when I breathe this light through my body and envision the star tetrahedron illuminated with light over and over again, and I maintain my focus upon the light, upon the star tetrahedron spinning, it allows me to enter into union with a higher consciousness consistently. Especially when I'm in my own lowest moments, I find that entering into my Merkabah vehicle of light instantly, like nothing else, brings me up out of that space and helps me to rise up and align with divine consciousness. in that spinning star tetrahedron, I pray. I pray for protection. I pray for resources to arrive to help me take care of my daily needs. I pray for the love that I've always given so freely to stay alive in my heart. I pray for my family, the people that are around me. I pray for people I don't know that I see are suffering. And every single time that I focus my attention on the light of my Merkabah, every single time that I surrender my needs to the light. And that is what we do as healers. We don't try to figure out how to heal from our human minds with our feet on the ground looking at the problem. We close our eyes and we rise up into our Merkabah vehicle of light. That is where the cure exists. That is where we get direction for where we need to go next. For me, that is always where my resources flow through. It gives me clarity for the next steps I need to take to support myself on earth. And every time that I've done this, every single time, it's worked. My prayers have come true. I've been protected. I've been provided for consistently over and over again. And I felt this love surrounding me, even when there was no physical source that this was coming from. So for me, the star tetrahedron and my activated Merkabah vehicle of light create a sacred space, a vortex around my body that I feel protects me from the chaos and the noise of the third dimensional world. And breathing this light through my body, focusing on the spinning star tetrahedron, leads me into a transcendent state of mind and a place of peace that is unshakable. In this place, I feel more connected to God, more connected, more comforted by spirit, and more aware of the invisible spiritual field that is always present. It's changed my life in this beautiful way because it's allowed me to enter into uncertainty with confidence. When uncertainty arises now, I enter my Merkabah vehicle of light. I close my eyes. I visualize the spinning field of star tetrahedrons around me, and I follow the process that I have been taught, the specific breath work, the specific visualization that I have been led through over and over again. And there's a protection that always comes, and there's a limitlessness that I feel within the Merkabah. I can see and feel my soul in a way that fuels my daily life. And in this way, Merkabah activation stimulates an expanded awareness, an emotional and mental regulation, and a heightened energetic sensitivity and perception. So to sum that all up, it makes us better healers. And for that reason, it's the foundation of our training as healers is to activate this Merkabah vehicle of light. Now, the original Jewish texts that teach Merkabah activation outlaw the public teaching of esoteric religious traditions regarding creation and the divine chariot or throne. It specifically says that the forbidden teachings of the chariot, known as the Mahaseh and Merkabah, may not be expounded before one. That should say may not be expounded upon before one, unless he is a sage who understands by his own knowledge. And it goes on to say, whoever speculates about these things would have been better for him if he had not come into this world. What is above, what is below, what was before, and what will be afterwards. Whoever is not sensitive to the honor of his creator, it would have been better for him if he had not come into this world, which honestly seems like really harsh when I originally read this. And I I stopped myself from sharing the overview of these teachings for a long time because of this warning. However, over the past 15 years that I've been doing this work, what I realize is that belief in God, in spirit, in the source of light, the center of all that is, whatever name that you give it, when you have fully given yourself to believe in that light, that source, that power outside of you, that makes you worthy. And as long as you start from that place, then it says here, unless you are a sage who understands by his own knowledge. I think I can speak for myself. I think that there are many of us today that are devoted to spirit in our personal lives. Like I was not, no one gave me the title of sage, and I was certainly not like indoctrinated into any formal religious structure when I, as like a leader, when I started this process. However, I was the Merkabah activation process that we teach, the final stage of it does initiate you as a priest or priestess of the light. So you do not have to start as a sage, but you do need to start with that devotion. And you do need to understand that in order for this to work for you, you have to give yourself fully as a as a I'll say devotee, but really the job of the priest or the priestess is to be a conduit of the light, a messenger of the light. You have to commit yourself to that in the deepest part of your heart and soul in order for this to work. And what I have seen is that not everyone starts from that place. Not everyone has that devotion to the light, and that's okay. What that means is that this Merkabah activation work is not for you. I feel like there are those of us right now that are on earth that are here to embody this teaching. We are here to activate our Merkabah vehicles of light. We already have this devotion to God, this surrender to the source of light at the center of the universe. It is deep within us already. And what this process does is it leads you through a formal awakening to the divinity that you have within yourself, and it teaches you a process to share that with others. But it cannot be entered into like, oh, this sounds interesting, I just want to try this out, or maybe this might be something I could add to my offerings. This is not that kind of work. It cannot be entered into um, just in a superficial way. There has to be a deep devotion present to God, to the light, to the source of all light, to the universe. That presence has to be a belief that you have deep within you already before you begin. And specifically, in the ancient Jewish teachings, only advanced Torah scholars, Torah being the Bible equivalent, were deemed worthy by their peers, could explore the secrets of the divine chariot. So what you'll find in our teachings is there's a lot of exploration of these deep biblical, ancient religious texts, not so that we can become indoctrinated into a specific religion, but just so that we gain a depth of understanding in the foundational religious principles that the divine chariot was built upon. Students also had to reach a mature age, traditionally 40, to handle the intense psychological and spiritual risks. And over the past 15 years, I've seen this. I've seen two things, like a lack of devotion, a lack of sincerity in like giving yourself fully to the practice, and also maybe like I'll describe it as a spiritual immaturity. Um, like maybe I've had experienced people who are just maybe wanting to dip their toes into the water, but haven't yet fully given themselves to God, to the light. And I don't necessarily think that you have to be a certain age, but I do think that there's a maturity that comes with surrendering your life to God, surrendering your life to spirit. And it's necessary to be there, or to want that deeply in order to enter into this journey. Teachers could only pass on brief chapter headings and never teach the full process in public. Specifically, the words were, "One may not expound upon the chariot in front of even one other, unless he is wise and already understands it on his own." So there's a real secrecy around these teachings, and I honor it deeply, more now than I ever have. I think that because I have experienced the power, the I'll call it like grandeur of this activated Merkabah field. And when I led others through it without clearly defining ahead of time the need to surrender your whole soul to the light, I think that I saw others who they didn't have this experience of grandeur. And as a matter of fact, they started to see the process in this corrupted way, because within themselves, they had not reached a state that was able to see clearly, that was able to fully commit themselves. So I think that this secrecy of the practices and this requirement of like devotion to the light it's essential, and it's something that you must either already have within you or have a deep desire to enter into before you start this process. And that leads us to how this works on a scientific level, because the practice of Merkabah activation is an art. So it comes out of our heart centers. It's something we have to give ourselves to on a spiritual level, but there's also a science to it. The full activation of your Merkabah takes a minimum of 12 months. It begins with the activation of your DNA and with these deep spiritual teachings that align you with the light of Christ. You simultaneously begin a process of visualization of the star tetrahedron. And what science teaches us and what we learn in the DNA activation process, and I've made a whole separate video on this. I'll link it underneath this video if you haven't already seen it, the introduction to the DNA activation and attunement process, which is like the ground floor of the activation of your Merkabah. what we do when we activate our DNA is we begin this new instruction of cellular expression in our bodies. And as you're building the Merkabah vehicle of light, and as you're activating your DNA, this deep healing is simultaneously taking place. So it's not only you have to wait till the very end of the process to step into and feel this expanded Merkabah vehicle of light around you. You want to think of it like a literal house you are building. Like just breaking ground on the house is exciting. Like you can start to feel it from the very beginning. And it's almost like it inspires these new thoughts, visions, dreams inside of you. There is consistent evidence of deep, transformative physical, mental, and emotional healing that happens, not just within the completed Merkabah vehicle of light, but as you journey through this entire process. This visualization takes time. The repeated visualization creates pathways in your energy field that the light anchors into. Through repetitive breath work over 12 months and through the activation of all of your DNA and your chakras, you build this field of light around you. This is a field that you create through your focus. And here's the most important part here. It expands symmetrically and is like a regular muscle. It needs routine to grow and to maintain strength. So I want you to think of like when you are building physical muscles in your body, your physical muscles, they grow symmetrically. You're not going to see a muscle come in that's misshapen. As a matter of fact, your muscles are beautifully perfect. Like if you see a picture of someone with a perfect muscular body, there's a symmetry in the muscles themselves. And that symmetry is a indicator of cellular health. Symmetry in our external bodies is and in our energy fields is an indicator of cellular symmetry. And cellular symmetry is a key indicator of health and healing. The symmetry of this field plays an integral role in the activation of your DNA and in the strength of your Merkabah. This process requires a spiritual surrender and also obedience to source, to God, to the universe, whatever you call it. This is why the Merkabah teachings are prohibited to be shared with the public. They were guarding this practice so that it was only known by those who had already surrendered their lives to God. And what I have seen with my own eyes now is that when a person has not yet surrendered themselves fully and completely to the light, when they're using this as a tool to serve themselves, like I want this to make me feel good, or I'm trying to logically get something out of this, or I'm trying to logically understand in the middle of the journey, like how this is helping me right now. When you enter into that logical place where you're trying to figure out how this is serving your ego, or like how this is maybe healing your body, even that's an egoic place. Like I have this certain thing that I want to heal, and I'm looking for a, a linear um, path to healing. When a person is coming from that place, which surprisingly a number of people come from, they come from this place of this like linear, logical, egoic place. Like this is a step in my career that I'm going to take, and this is going to serve my career. A quality happens known as symmetry breaking. So service to the ego breaks the field so that one cannot experience the full Merkaba. These symmetry breaking events are unique to each person. And I've seen this happen in a number of ways. A lot of times I see people who are unable to give up habits that their old self was using to like comfort themselves. So let's say you're drinking every night with your significant other, and that's just something that you guys do all the time. You open up a bottle of something and have a couple drinks at the end of every night, and you've been doing this for your whole life. And now you're 45 years old and now you enter into this practice and you think, okay, I'm going to continue this, but I'm still going to be doing my drinking. I'm still going to be finding my comfort in these lower vibrational frequencies. What I see is that it just doesn't work. There is this break that happens in the activation process where I see people literally unable to move forward. It's like they hit a wall. And I've also seen this in like an inability. It's mostly in an inability to let go. So when we surrender to the light, we say, I'm going to give up everything that is not of the light. I'm really going to give all my habits, my mind, my daily actions. I'm going to give them to the light. And if there's anything that I need to change or stop doing, I am willing, open to do it. And even if it's hard, and even if I say, okay, I'm going to let this go, but then I take it back again and I let it go and I take it back. You don't have to be perfect. Like as long as you have that openness in your heart to release old habits, specifically habits that you're using to comfort yourself. You are, as long as you are surrendered to the light in your mind, even if you're not doing it in a perfect way, it can be messy. It can be completely imperfect. It can take you 10 years to fully surrender yourself or 16 years. There's no timeline here as to when this needs to happen. But as long as you've given yourself completely, you are able to experience that full activation. And that's what our ancestors were trying to protect people from. What they're saying is that if you try to start this process without being in the mindset of the sage, and the sage knows that there is a higher power, there is a higher light that we are here to surrender to. And that higher light is the source of our health. It is the source of our resources. It is the source of our comfort. It is the source of all ease. And the full activation of your Merkaba vehicle of light will only work for you when you surrender your ego and when you are obedient to the light of God. And that leads us into the actual vehicle of light that we are building. So we're going to look at this a little more closely. The source we work with in Merkaba activation is the white light of the Christ. It is the source of and a mixture of all of the rays of light. Merkaba activation begins with a process that purifies and activates your DNA and your chakra centers, and then the activation of your DNA and your chakras creates an anchor that your Merkaba both expands out of and roots into. The frequencies of light radiate through your energy field and allow you to be conscious of yourself as a being of light. So what happens is these rays get stronger over time, and they are what build this muscle in your light body. So I want you to imagine this field 50 feet around you right now. And I want you to envision that there is a light radiating out 50 feet around you. This light is here at all times. And through the Merkaba activation process, you create pathways in your energetic field so that you're not just like imagining this light, but it's a visceral connection to the light. You feel it just like you feel when you build your muscles. You can feel that strength in your body subtly all day long. And that strength is present in your light body all day long as well. When you activate this field around you, and when you repetitively move through this process, that strengthens it. This allows you not only to come into contact with the consciousness of God outside of you, but it allows you to anchor that light into your physical body, which is where the presence of God lives within you. So it literally activates this awareness of your own divinity. This field is stabilizing. It brings mental clarity, physical vitality, and emotional calm and resilience. As a matter of fact, in astronomy, there is a literal configuration in the sky known as the Star of David. It's not a single star, it's actually a collection of stars, and it only happens like certain times. So these stars are not always in the specific configuration. There are like certain times when these stars align to form the Star of David. It's actually a grand sextile. So what that means is that there's like a harmonious convergence in the heavens of these stars that form the Star of David. This is a highly complex, rare formation that occurs when 6 of these planets align in 2 overlapping grand trines. When it appears in the sky, it illuminates innate gifts, harmony, and brings good fortune. So there is this field, which is the Merkabah field, which is that Star of David. The Star of David is literally in the shape of the Merkabah. It is an energetic field that always brings a deep harmonic presence with it. It always illuminates gifts, and it's considered the luckiest star formation to be born under. And when it appears in the sky, it just recently appeared, like I want to say 3 or 4 months ago. It is one of the most auspicious times on earth, meaning that there's a luck that it brings to earth when it forms. And that luck is, I would describe it as healing. So there is a healing vortex that is created within this field, not just when you visualize it within your body, but also when it appears in the sky itself. And that brings us back to the Merkabah activation process. And this is where like the science unfolds, because what we are doing through our breath work and visualization is we are activating we are strengthening what's known as our epigenome, which is is a sheath of energy it is a sheath of like we'll call it chemicals, because it's a physical sheath in your body of chemicals that surround your cells. And so what you're doing is through hypnosis, breath work, meditation, energy healing, if this is not just a spiritual journey, this is literally it is a process that is shaping your epigenome, which is the chemical field that surrounds your cells. So it brings you into a more harmonic state. It brings your cells into a healed state. And why I am so committed to this process is because there is no other energy healing modality that I've ever worked with before that I have seen consistently help people shift into a state of health. Over and over and over again, I see people that are like, I've been experiencing this knee pain for the past 25 years, and all of a sudden it started to lift. Or I've had this like long term illness, chronic illness that I haven't been able to, nothing has been able to heal it. But when they enter into the Merkabah activation process, it it's like it dissolves, and they're able to feel an ease and enter into a state of vitality that they had never experienced before. And this isn't just me. It's not just one person I've worked with or two. It's hundreds of people. And what I would say is every single person that I've brought through this process, whether they finished it or not, because some people kind of get halfway, and as I mentioned earlier, they like hit a wall. Even the people who hit a wall document before that some sort of major emotional, mental, or physical healing. So this process is so specific because it meticulously leads you through this breathwork journey that in which you are visualizing and breathing this light in this deep energy healing experience through literally every cell in your body and every energetic center. Your attention to the light is what activates your connection to spirit, and it is what activates your Merkabah. The Merkabah vehicle of light anchors through your energy centers, and this stable, harmonious field stimulates healing. It also becomes a temple vehicle that allows you to be a conduit for the healing of others. Once your Merkabah vehicle of light is activated, it's a lifelong process that you enter into to maintain your energetic body to support it. You learn not only how to activate your Merkabah vehicle of light, but also how to live within your activated Merkabah vehicle in service to the healing work you are here to fulfill on earth. So the specific course that we are starting with is Merkabah Activation 101. And this activation happens through repetition over time. It's what you do every day that's key. This doesn't happen in one day. It doesn't happen in a week, in a month. It is a slow daily repetition that builds your Merkabah vehicle of light. So what this first course in the journey does is it requires integrating this practice into your daily life. It gives you a series of activations that are designed to be repeated, like basic exercises for your energetic body. It provides you with a healing routine that guides you to certain outcomes. It gives you a daily practice that builds these energetic muscles. It's a comprehensive combination of cleansing, detoxification, and activating your energetic field through healing experiences that creates this synergy that allows for the greatest potential healing. The best part of this is that all modalities are strengthened and supported by Merkabah activation. And I mentioned earlier, like a lot of people have come to this process because it's like a career building strategy for them. And even though, as I mentioned, like that can't be your only reason to enter into the journey, you also have to simultaneously be able to surrender your life to the light. However, there is value in using Merkabah activation as a tool in your work as a healing professional. That is why we are here in this format doing this work. We're not just doing it to connect with the consciousness of God. There is a spiritual journey that is part of this, but our primary goal is healing. the healing of ourselves and the healing of the people that we work with. So if your goal is to become a professional healer, then Merkabah activation is an essential tool to have in your toolbox. But even if that's not your goal, all healing modalities will benefit from integrating Merkabah activation. Every part of your life will benefit from this. Like, I find that I've just become a better mother, a better sister, a better friend. I found it easier to take better care of myself after completing this process. The basic principles can be integrated into any work that you do. A clear, balanced, and strong energy field is your greatest treasure. And so that is ultimately what you are creating in this process. You're creating a living temple that you are able to carry with you or drive within like a vehicle of light wherever you go. We start in Merkabah Activation 101 with a practice that purifies and strengthens your energetic body through daily practices. And we prioritize clearing our energy field. And this is a practice that you will have to go back to over and over and over again, because purifying your energetic field, it's not just the first step of the process, it's also the last step of the process. So what you'll find is that once you've finished the Merkabah activation journey and you've fully activated your field, you're going to go back to step one and purify all over again. It is like a series of exercises, and no one exercise is more valuable than the other. You want to think of this first course, I think of it like stretching, right? And this is really like a marathon that we're running. You can't run the marathon without being limber, because it's likely that you're going to hurt yourself somewhere along the way. So as we detoxify our energy field, it's like we're stretching ourselves. We're opening up to receive the light more fully. And then even when you're done with the marathon, you need to stretch again. That helps to repair your muscles, and it helps to prepare you for the next stage of the marathon, because this marathon that we're entering into, it's a lifelong journey. It's not something that is complete in 12 months. It's something that we learn the process to and that we repeat over and over and over again. This also leaves you with a healing toolbox. So all of our courses, when you complete the course, you then have access to a healing toolbox. So that means that you have all of the resources that you'll be able to go back to use in your personal healing practice, to use professionally over and over again. So you'll have a toolbox that will help to prepare your Merkabah vehicle of light. You'll have the DNA activation toolbox. There's a chakra activation toolbox. And there's the final Merkabah vehicle of light, the full activation toolbox. This is a healing process that you can return to over and over again. And we're now just going to briefly talk about the courses themselves, like how we have structured these courses so that you can learn this process. This is me. I am your instructor in this course. I have been initiated as a priestess in the Order of Melchizedek, and that has fully initiated me into the light. It is part of the process that teaches you how to fully activate your Merkabah vehicle of light. I'm also a holistic therapist, so I brought this Merkabah work into my holistic therapy practice. I'm a certified hypnotherapist and Usai Reiki master, and I've been professionally trained in IAT, angel therapy, crystal therapy, and spiritual healing. And my journey through this is as a healer. So I'm looking at it from a research perspective. Like, I want to document the changes that my clients are going through so that I can show later clients the success of this process, because I truly feel that there are so many conditions out there, chronic health conditions that do not have a cure currently, that can be healed through this Merkabah activation process. That can also be healed through parts of the process. So, what I've witnessed is that the clients that I've had, I haven't led all my clients through the Merkabah activation process, because that is just a journey that I've gone through as a practitioner. Now, I've led other practitioners through the Merkabah activation process, but my clients, I'm not leading them through a process to activate the Merkabah, but I am leading them through a process to activate their DNA. I'm taking parts of the Merkabah activation process, which you'll learn about which parts that we take out, to share with our clients. And what happens is that also, as I have activated my Merkabah vehicle of light, when they come in, my clients come into contact with me, there is I'm a catalyst for a deeper healing, because I'm anchoring this field around me. And whether or not they are going to enter into the full process with me to anchor that field around them, that's not actually necessary for healing to take place. So, the full activation of your Merkabah vehicle of light, that is for the people who are devoted to the light. That is for people who are devoted to being practitioners, or devoted to this personal journey of coming into union with the light and building this temple around them. But it's not for everybody, and not everybody wants to enter into this in-depth process. But the beauty about this is that we have broken it down into pieces, so that for those that are not ready for the whole activation, we can still lead our clients through deep transformative healing by breaking apart the Merkabah activation process and leading our clients through parts of it. And this all takes place within our certification programs, which you can find on our website, pleiadianinstitute.org. The core of the Merkabah activation process, so the process that I outlined for you, which is 4 parts, where we start with Merkabah Activation 101, we're preparing, we do the DNA activation, the chakra activation, and then the full Merkabah activation, that takes place in our DNA activation certification program. So you can find this program on our website. And there you will also find we have a total of 5 what are called integrative certification programs. Every single one of these certification programs includes the full Merkabah activation process. So it's not only in the DNA activation certification program that you will learn Merkabah activation and be led through the full process, but also in the integrative crystal therapy, you will learn the full process of activating your Merkabah. In the spiritual intuitive healing certification program, you'll learn the full process. In our integrative hypnotherapy and our master energy healer certification program. So everyone that is being led through a certification program is learning and training in this Merkabah activation process. You can find all those programs and explore each of them individually on our website. Alternatively, you can take each course one by one. So this whole process that we just went through in this video, I introduced you to the big picture. And that is where we kind of are understanding what the Merkabah activation is, and learning about the preparation that our body goes through. This takes place over a course of 10 weeks. So this was just an introduction to a 10-week process that happens inside of Merkabah Activation 101. So that is the first course in this process that we are uh, learning about today, and this video serves as an introduction to that course, and you can find that course and learn more about it on our campus at campus.pleiadianinstitute.org. If you have any specific questions, if you're a current student and you have specific questions, don't hesitate to reach out to ask those questions or for support. We have a new support center located. If you're a current student, you can find it on your student dashboard. It's called the Student Support Portal. You can also use this link here, pleiadianinstitute.org/student support portal, to get there directly. And there are all the ways that you can communicate with us, and it gives you every resource that you could possibly need for support. You can also email us at studentsupport@pleiadianinstitute.org, and you can book an in-person appointment to talk to us. Every Wednesday, we have one-on-one support meetings, and you can book those meetings in the student support portal. Our philosophy of this course is don't let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. I think because we're entering into this modality I don't know, it was really revered by our ancestors as one of the highest teachings that we could learn. I think that we want to make sure that we're in the mindset currently of just trusting that as long as our hearts are in full alignment with the light and we've surrendered on that level, that we have all that we need. Like, you do not need to be perfect. You don't need to have perfect habits. You can be imperfect in all ways in your life and still enter into this process of the activation of your Merkabah vehicle of light and be successful with it. And that's because the light itself brings order to your life, to your mind. It brings an increase of ease in your alignment with healthy habits. So you don't need to do it all yourself. There's actually this invisible field that you build around you will actually support you as you go through this process. So the time is now. We are the change that we are seeking in the world right now. And there is this limitless field of healing and light that we all have access to. And I'm grateful that you are here with me and that we are learning together and practicing how to activate this light, how to become one with it, and how to carry it out into the world to support all the people on earth that need it the most. Thank you for joining me today, and I invite you to follow us if you do not on Instagram and Facebook if you are not a current student. And that is where we will share more about this process of Merkabah activation and the healing stories that come along with it. I am sending you a wave of love and light from the center of my heart today. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, I thank you for your time and your presence, and namaste.